Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 5th of September, also known to be celebrated as the Teachers' Day. Why it is celebrated as the Teachers' Day? Because it is the birth anniversary of a noted and very respected teacher, Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan. So let's begin our today's session. We will be covering three topics. First is Prime Minister Modi's interview to the Press Trust of India, and this has happened before the G20 summit. So the questions and answers framed for the Prime Minister were aimed at India's position in G20, what is India hoping for, what are the challenges we are facing, and right from the Prime Minister's view, I have decoded this and brought it for you that you'll be able to understand what the Prime Minister is thinking while going into the summit. Second topic, that is Russia-Ukraine grain deal. It is also called as Black Sea Grain Initiative. Now in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, there was crisis and the crisis is still continuing. It's been more than 1 year and the crisis is still continuing. So what Russia did in 2022, it blockaded the ports of Ukraine from which it used to export food grains to the world. And Ukraine is a major exporter of vital food grains like wheat, oilseeds and such like. And due to which Ukraine was not able to export. Then in July 2022, this grain deal was signed in which Russia removed that blockade from the Ukrainian ports and allowed food grains to be exported to the world market. Due to the lack of supply or due to the reduced supply, because supply was here blocked at the Ukrainian ports, the food prices went up in the international market. This I would say war-like situation was having a devastating impact, especially on the poor countries. So this deal was signed way back in July 2022. It was revived again in March this year, that is 2023, where Russia agreed that for the next 60 days, it is going to continue with this deal, means it is going to allow food grains to get exported from the Ukrainian ports. But now Russia has said, we are not going to allow. The blockade is again here. And the Russian president has met the Turkish president, in which the Russian president has clearly conveyed that I will allow exports from Ukrainian ports if my agricultural exports are also allowed to enter in the market, because they also have been blockaded by Ukraine, which is being supported by the West. So that is why it was in news. So in detail, we'll see which ports of Ukraine were blockaded, what are the basic, I would say, details of this grain deal, what role has Turkey to play in it, does Ukraine or bring in any country from the West, what role does UN have to play in this? All these things we'll be covering in this particular segment. And finally, we'll be having a special coverage on Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, because as I said, today is 5th of September, his birth date, and we celebrate Teachers' Day on this particular day. Now, in this particular segment, we'll see about the life of Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, his academic achievements, his political career, his works, what he has done, why 5th September is celebrated as Teachers' Day. All these we'll learn, because UPSC, can ask such kind of questions in prelims as well as mains also. So let's get started with the first topic. Now, PM Modi interview to PTI. Now the line which you read here is GDP-centric view changing to human-centric one. Actually, you'll get to understand this when we move ahead in the topic. But yes, just to give you a glimpse of this particular line. See, G20 are the world's largest economies. largest 20 economies, 19 countries and 1 EU. We covered in yesterday's lecture the basics of G20. Now, everyone is focused more and more on increasing their GDP. But when the COVID-19 pandemic struck, there were certain realizations that we need to focus on health also. We need to focus on humans also. And India's response to the COVID-19 pandemic was a human-centric response. And that is why the Prime Minister is saying that the GDP-centric view is changing to a human-centric one. And India, during its presidency of G20, has advocated this to all these 20 major economies. The challenge is whether this will continue when India passes on this presidency to Brazil, or will this stop? In my opinion, it should continue because human development is actually the real form of development. So let's see. We'll be talking about G20, fiscal responsibility, renewable energy, challenge of debt restructuring, and problems of the global south, which the global south is facing. Now, what did the Prime Minister say about the achievements of the Indian presidency of G20? Now, last year, December 2022, we got the presidency of G20. What have been our achievements till now? The summit has not been conducted, but remember that up till the summit, the country planned around 200 meetings of G20 among various working groups, among the Sherpa track, among the finance track. All these we've discussed in yesterday's session. And he talked about the genesis of G20. First of all, he said that G20 came as an organization in the end of last century. It was 1999 when it was formed. Then he said that when the global economic crisis in the first decade of 21st century struck, it got expanded. That is 2008 financial crisis which struck USA. Then the heads of the states or the head of the government started meeting under G20. We discussed it already. But when the pandemic struck, the world understood that in addition to the economic challenges, there are also other important and immediate challenges impacting humanity. Now, the purpose of G20 getting formed was collectively tackling those economic challenges, because in 1999, when G20 was formed, it was a group of central bank governors and the finance ministers, because they wanted to collectively tackle the challenges the global economy is facing, because global economy was getting close-knit by that time. Then financial crisis of 2008 made the heads of the states or the head of the government also to intervene by economic challenges will come. So we need to address these challenges at this level also, which was a higher level as compared to the previous central bank governors and finance ministers level. But when the COVID struck, they said that apart from economic challenges, there are other challenges also which need to be addressed. Obviously, the health concerns. By this time, the world was already taking note of India's human-centric model of development. We're talking just post-COVID, because our response to the pandemic was a clear and coordinated approach. Direct assistance to the most vulnerable. The most vulnerable people were getting direct assistance of food grains, that too free, through the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. We will be covering this Yojana in the future sessions. In 2 or 3 days only I'll cover this. Then we used technology, means Aadhaar, to identify the beneficiaries under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. We came up with vaccines in record time. We administered the world's largest vaccine drive by vaccinating more than 100 crore people. In total, more than 200 crore vaccines have been administered. Sharing medicines and vaccines with nearly 150 countries, we did not limit to ourselves. We supplied vaccines, medicines to almost 150 countries in the world. That is around, almost, if I talk about 3/4 of the world. Almost. Because there are more than 200 countries, out of which 150 countries to which we have supplied these kind of either medicines or vaccines. So the world has appreciated and acknowledged India's contributions, India's response to COVID situations in its own country and also helping others. So many positive impacts are coming out of India's G20 presidency. The effort towards greater inclusion for the global south. Global south is basically the developing and underdeveloped countries of Asia, Africa and South America. So we have advocated as a country that we want to include African Union in G20, which was unanimously accepted by all the members. Let us see. During these 2 days, that is September 9th and 10th, when the G20 summit will be there, we will be able to include African Union or not. So that we will be seeing. On the challenges faced by G20 while handing over presidency to Brazil, the Prime Minister simply said that we as a country were able to change this approach, that is a GDP-centric view, to a human-centric one. The Prime Minister says that the challenge is that this change of approach should be continued by Brazil. Brazil, remember, itself is the member of the global south, a developing country from South America it is. So it should be able to take on the legacy. We are passing on the baton to Brazil, and Brazil should be able to continue this. If Brazil is able to do so, then I would say one major problem of the global south will be tackled. The major problem of global south is, poverty, lack of healthcare facilities, hunger, malnutrition. All these are human-centric approaches which we need to, work upon right now. ठीक है, आज GDP is growing. We are the fastest growing economy presently, India. But we have changed this to a human-centric one also. We are going this also, and we need to uplift also. We have started, but this needs to continue. And global partnership is required in this context also. It is not like individually countries are doing these things. Definitely global partnership is required, and that is why we are pitching this in the G20. Like a new world order was seen after the Second World War, the new world order is taking shape post-COVID. Now the Prime Minister was heard about saying the same thing in his Independence Day speech. And this new world order post-COVID, there are multiple poles, and India has emerged as one of the most important poles in the world. Countries nowadays are looking up to India. We just saw how we supplied more than 150 countries with vaccines and medicine supplies during and after COVID. So the Prime Minister says that we'll be able to do this, eradicate poverty or the concerns of the global south, whatever they are, when sabka saath, sabka vishwas, which is already happening in our country, it needs to translate it to the entire world. And, he proposed making African Union a permanent member of G20, which unanimously has been agreed by all the countries. But let's see what happens. Now, the next question which was posed to the Prime Minister was, India has formed this International Solar Alliance. 2015 we did it. It is headquartered in India, Gurugram. Then we also formed another organization named as CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. International Solar Alliance actually aims at developing the capacities of the sunshine countries. Sunshine countries are the tropical countries between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, to develop their solar energy producing capacities. On the other hand, Coalition for Disaster Resilience Infrastructure is basically a knowledge hub. What this knowledge hub will do? It will give advice, expert advice to those countries who want it, first of all. And what will be that advice about? That advice will be about developing infrastructure which is resilient to climate change induced disasters. Like for example, tsunamis come, or let's suppose floods come. So you are creating infrastructure, like for example, you are laying electric wires for transmission of electricity. Now the CDRI will say that don't lay overhead cables, lay underground cables. They will not get impacted. Like this. So that kind of infrastructure becomes disaster resilient infrastructure, disasters which are happening due to climate change. That has also been proposed by India. It is also headquartered in India, New Delhi, CDRI. And now India is going to promote or propose, first of all, a biofuel alliance. It is highly expected in this year's G20 summit, which is going to happen. First of all, let us understand what is a biofuel. Now, wherever the word bio is attached or bio concerns with a living organism. Living organism can be a fauna or a flora. So, a fuel which has been formed from a living organism is called as a biofuel. Now, ethanol basically is an example of biofuel. Ethanol is produced by sugar molasses, or it is produced by the agricultural residue, that is rice husk and all. Earlier what we used to do, we used to dump the sugar molasses after extracting sugarcane juice from it and making sugar out of it. The husk was discarded. Now the rice husk, you might have learnt about or read about or knowing about that particular situation which happens every year in Delhi NCR region post Diwali, and we popularly call it parali burning is happening in the states of Haryana and Punjab. The farmers over there, they burn the rice husk, that is the agricultural residue, and make their fields, agricultural fields, ready for the next crop. But that agricultural residue can be used to make ethanol instead of burning it. That is a biofuel. And we have a national biofuels policy, Government of India, where we want to blend 20% of ethanol with petrol. Means if you go to buy 1 liter of petrol, 800 ml will be petrol and 200 ml will be ethanol. It is called as E20. And we have to do this by 2025. This has multiple, I would say, positive impacts, like it reduces the pollutants coming out of the vehicles. So vehicular pollution will get reduced. It reduces our dependence upon the petroleum imports. It will definitely reduce our import bills. So the question posed to him was, will this biofuel alliance, just like the International Solar Alliance or CDRI, will help import dependent countries such as India on energy security? Definitely, it is going to help. So he said that we are perhaps the first among the G20 countries to have achieved our climate targets 9 years ahead of the scheduled date. Actually, the scheduled date, now 2015 was the time when we gave our first set of INDCs, intended nationally determined contributions to conserve the environment, to United Nations. The target year was 2030. The INDCs of India were so ambitious that people were saying, will you be able to achieve it? People means the countries were saying, will you be able to achieve it? India said, don't worry. India achieved it in 2021. That is why he is saying that 9 years ahead of scheduled date we have achieved it. And in 2021 we submitted another set of INDCs to UN and said that we will be achieving these. Earlier there were 3 INDCs in 2015. Now we are having 5 INDCs. Now in one session I'll cover INDCs also, don't worry on that. So but as of now we need to understand that we did it way before time. Now we were earlier just considered as a member of global efforts. Now we are playing a leading role in many initiatives at the global level. International Solar Alliance, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, they are bringing countries together for the planet. It is not only for India, it is for the planet Now the Biofuel Alliance is another step in this direction. Definitely, it will help the developing countries and it will create options for them. So let us see how, if this happens or not, or if it happens, how it is going to be rolled out or implemented. He also said that Biofuel Alliance is also beneficial from the perspective of circular economy. Circular economy is basically, I told you that the farmers in Punjab and Haryana, they were burning the parali, rice husk, which was causing pollution. Now waste is generated, waste is burnt, or waste is accumulated. That is linear economy. But if that waste is utilized for some economic purpose, like that parali is being utilized for creating ethanol, for generating ethanol, then this is an example of circular economy. So this has to be achieved, and this ethanol or biofuel alliance is very good from this perspective as well. Circular economy will definitely aid in getting the resources. The input cost will reduce. Second of all, it will reduce pollution also, because earlier they used to get burned. Now they are being utilized. Then on the concept of spreading G20 meetings across India, here's an interesting take. He said that earlier things were concentrated in New Delhi, particularly Vigyan Bhavan he mentioned. But we have made sure that in our 1 year of Presidency of G20, meetings happen all across the country. He said that meetings have taken place in 28 states and 8 union territories. And 60 cities have been the host of these meetings. He said over 220 meetings have happened. Now here also the target was 200 and now 220 meetings have happened. Some are left also to happen. As I told you yesterday, by April 100 meetings were completed. But now the figure is coming out that by now 220 meetings have been conducted over 60 cities, and these 60 cities are from 28 states and 8 union territories. Even meetings were conducted in Kashmir and Arunachal Pradesh. These two places, the meetings were objected by our neighbors, and you know what neighbors or which neighbors objected the meetings. Ours is such a, on this particular thing, on meetings in Kashmir and Arunachal Pradesh, he said that ours is such a vast, beautiful and diverse nation. When G20 meetings are happening, isn't it natural that meetings will be held in every part of the country? Clearly signifying that these are parts of India. Nobody can lay claims over these parts. Over 1 lakh participants participated from 125 countries in these meetings. Now on consensus on debt restructuring for Global South. First we'll understand what debt restructuring means. Now you might have heard about China's checkbook diplomacy, where China infamously became known for giving loans and then laying countries in debt traps. A classic example, a neighboring country in South, that is Sri Lanka. Who will need those loans? The Global South, means developing and underdeveloped countries will need such loans, and then they'll be in debt traps. They'll have to compromise on something or the other. They'll have to give presents to China over there. So this is not, I would say, a nice way of spreading yourself. I'm pointing out towards China. So he said, the interviewer asked, is India helping countries trapped in the Chinese debt trap such as Sri Lanka, Sudan, etc.? How much increase in allocation of assistance has India made to these countries? Now, basically, he said that it is a matter of great concern for the world presently, debt restructuring. He further said that we need to further understand that why did these countries go for asking loans from China? And he pointed out that the fiscal health of those countries was not good. What is fiscal health? When those countries are spending more and earnings are less. Spending is more on, I would say, populist measures. They're distributing freebies to the people. Obviously, freebies are free for the people. For the government, it is not free. Government has to purchase those things and then distribute among the people. In the short run, political brownies or political points will be gained by those political parties. But in the longer run, it is going to lead the country, the society, the citizens, everyone into crisis. The same happened in Sri Lanka. The Rajapaksa brothers, when they were elected, means Gotabaya Rajapaksa was elected as the president of Sri Lanka in 2019. And at that time, they announced before elections in their election campaign that we'll give you tax rebates, we'll give you free this, free that, and they delivered on their promise. So once they delivered on their promise, they had their expenditures risen. And how to fill this gap? They'll take loans from China if their expenditure is more and income is less. So he was saying that I have cautioned many states also in India not to go for such kind of measures. Even the central government, during COVID, it went for free distribution of ration under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, but this scheme has been withdrawn now. Now the situation is normal. Since 1st of January 2023, the scheme has been withdrawn. So the government of India wants to say that we are leading by example, and that is why we are saying to many states also in India that don't go for such kind of, I would say, populist measures. Last year there was a popular term, Revdi culture, distributing free Revdis to the people. People will get happy, you will get the votes, but the country will suffer at large. And then he went on saying in the end that we are helping Sri Lanka. Actually, we are helping Sri Lanka to overcome the crisis. We have given a line of credit of $1 billion to Sri Lanka. We are developing some, Trincomalee oil fields and all over there. So all sorts of help, whatever we can do, we are doing. We are doing trade with Sri Lanka in our domestic currencies so that their dependence on dollar reduces. They do not have dollars in their forex reserve. So this is there. Then on differences between G7 and China, Russia combined. Now, as I told you yesterday that the main aim of India in the G20 summit is to generate consensus. Consensus between G7 countries on one side and China, Russia on the other side, because they are at conflicting terms with each other. So in this particular thing, he said that, a very balanced reply he gave. He said that there are many different conflicts across various regions of the world. All of them need to be resolved through dialogue and diplomacy. This is our stand on any conflict anywhere. Whether G20 president or not, we will support every effort to ensure peace across the world. And in last year's SCO summit which happened in Samarkand, Prime Minister Modi expressed to the president of Russia, that is Vladimir Putin, that this age is not the age of war. It should be stopped. So this is clear that India does not want war. India wants peace everywhere. And this is the mindset of the Prime Minister brought right to you. So you can use these things in your answers. Many of you will be writing mains this year. So in your essay papers also you can use these things. These become very important. Then the next topic is Russia-Ukraine grain deal. Now I told you the background. February 2022, Russia attacked Ukraine. Ports of Ukraine blockaded. Food grains from those ports not allowed to get exported to the world. And Ukraine is a major supplier or exporter of food grains to the world. As a result, in the entire world, the supply of those food grains, particularly wheat, was down. Prices up. Countries all over the world were worried. UN intervened, Turkey intervened, and a grain deal was brokered between Ukraine and Russia, where Russia allowed the exports of food grains from those Ukrainian ports. The grain deal was continuing. In March this year, it was reviewed. Russia again allowed and said for 60 days I am extending it. But now Russia is saying no, I am not going to continue. The President Vladimir Putin said Russia was ready to revive the Black Sea grain deal as soon as restrictions on its own agri-product exports were lifted. Because there are some restrictions which are there on Russian agri-products as well. Obviously, Russia is blockading the Ukraine with the help of West is also blockading Russian exports. This was clarified by Russian president in his meeting with the Turkish president. Now the issue, Russian Navy blockaded, all these things I've explained. But there are many countries in the world who depend upon the wheat imported from Ukraine. Now you see this country Moldova, 92% of its wheat comes from Ukraine. Lebanon, Qatar, Tunisia, even our beloved neighbor Pakistan, 48% of Pakistan's wheat is imported from Ukraine. And you see this country Egypt, 26% of Egypt's wheat is imported from Ukraine. Now, another interesting story over here. Last year, wheat supplies in the global market were less due to this Russia-Ukraine war. India, which is also one of the largest producers of wheat in the world, here productivity was less because of heat waves, climate change. And government of India imposed export bans on wheat. We are not going to export wheat this year because we need wheat for our domestic consumption. Our people will go hungry if we export wheat. But under special circumstances, on the request of Egyptian government, we exported some wheat to them because Egypt was dependent upon Ukrainian wheat, which it was not getting because of that blockade. So this happened. Russia-Ukraine grain export deal 2022. It was a UN-backed deal, means United Nations intervened to allow the export of millions of tons of grains from blockaded Black Sea ports under Ukraine. A signing ceremony at Dolmabahce Palace in Istanbul was attended by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who played a key role during the months of these tense negotiations. The deal, what is the deal? The deal is, it makes provisions for the safe passage of ships. Basically, there will be a establishment of control center in Istanbul. We'll see the control center, what it is to do. The control center will be staffed by UN, Turkish, Russian and Ukrainian officials, means all four. UN and Turkey were intermediaries, Russia and Ukraine were the conflicting parties. So, representatives of all four will be based here in the control center in Istanbul. Ships would undergo inspection to ensure they are not carrying weapons. No Russian ships would escort vessels, that there would be no Russian representative present at Ukrainian ports. Russian representative will be here in Istanbul only. On Ukrainian ports, Ukrainian representatives will be there. Now just see through this map. This black portion which you are seeing is the Black Sea. Okay. Here is Ukraine. Here is Crimea. It is a territory which was annexed by Russia in 2014. The three ports are here. The name of the three ports, Chornomorsk, Odessa and Yuzhny or Pivdeny. Now what will happen? The ships, empty ships will come here in Istanbul. This is Istanbul, Turkey. They will be inspected. Then they will go collect food grains from these three ports, come back again to this Bosphorus Strait. Again they will be inspected and then they will go wherever they want to go. Russian, Ukrainian, UN and Turkish officials will be located here in the city of Istanbul in that control center. Now, Joint Coordination Center was established to monitor the implementation, hosted in Istanbul, includes representatives from Russia, Turkey, Ukraine and the United Nations. UN acts as the secretariat for the center, this center. Procedure is, vessels wishing to participate in the initiative will first undergo inspection of the Istanbul to ensure they are empty of cargo. Then they sail through the maritime humanitarian corridor to Ukrainian ports to load. The corridor is monitored 24/7 and vessels on the return journey will also be inspected at the inspection area in Istanbul, and then from there they will go wherever they want to go. Now, importance of this deal, basically it potentially averted the threat of catastrophic global food crisis. People did not have food to eat, so they were looking forward to this. Ukraine is one of the world's largest exporters of wheat, corn, sunflower, but Russia's invasion of the country did not let these kind of products to be exported. Some grain is being transported through Europe by rail, and there's one more Sulina channel which Ukraine is using presently but that also was bombed by Russia recently, 2-3 weeks ago. And now, the final piece of news, that is Dr. SV Radhakrishnan, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. On this occasion of Teachers' Day, which happens to be his birthday, that is why we celebrate Teachers' Day, we should know things about him. Now, Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan was an Indian philosopher, well-known teacher, writer and politician who served as the second President of India from 1962 to 67. He was born in Andhra Pradesh on the 5th of September 1888. So, 5th of September, the birth date, that is why being celebrated as Teachers' Day. Now, the father of Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, Sarvapalli Veeraswamy, he was a subordinate revenue official. His mother, Sarvapalli Sita, looked after his family. She was a housewife. He was married to Siva Kamu and became a father to 5 daughters and 1 son. When we talk about his education, at the age of 17, he attended Madras Christian College in the year 1906. He completed his master's degree in philosophy and became a professor. So, this is basically a brief biodata about him. But yes, we need to know much about his academic career. Since he was a writer, he was a philosopher, he wrote on culture, he wrote on religion also. And he was one of the promoters of Hindu religion. And let's see his works. As a writer, he wrote mainly to spread Indian culture. He defended Hinduism, and it is reflected in his well-known works, The Philosophy of Upanishads, East and West, Some Reflections. Upanishads are basically the extensions of Vedas, in which the Vedas are interpreted and explained. In 1931, he was knighted and came to be known as Sir Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan until 1947. Because after independence, abolition of titles is one of the fundamental rights, Article 18 of the Constitution. So he had to give up his title, and his title Sir was replaced by Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. He was also appointed as Spalding Professor of Eastern Religions and Ethics in Oxford University. So in Oxford University, he was also teaching Eastern Religion and Ethics, and this was the year 1936. Later on, after his demise, Oxford University started Radhakrishnan Chevening Scholarships and Radhakrishnan Memorial Award in his memory. He was the Vice Chancellor of Andhra University, Banaras Hindu University, and Chancellor of Delhi University from 1953 to 62. So these were his academic achievements, we can say. And as far as we know now, he was an author also, he was a professor also, teacher also, and teaching in one of the finest institutes in the world, that is the Oxford University. Now, when we talk about his political life, in 1946, he was elected to the Constituent Assembly. Constituent Assembly's responsibility was to frame the Constitution. He had also served as an ambassador to UNESCO and then later to Moscow. So he had some experience in diplomacy also. In 1952, he became the first Vice President of India, second President of Independent India in 1962. So first Vice President and second President Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. He was awarded by Bharat Ratna in 1954 when he was the Vice President of India. Now, why his birthday is celebrated as Teachers' Day? This is interesting. So when he was the president, many of his students used to come and visit him and request that his birthday should be celebrated as a special day. He was such widely respected and known among his students. Then he requested that I don't want my birthday to be celebrated on my name. He said that my birthday should be celebrated as Teachers' Day. Teachers' Day to recognize the contribution of teachers to the society. He said, instead of celebrating my birthday, it would be my proud privilege if 5th September is observed as Teachers' Day. And hence, it started to get observed as the Teachers' Day. And today is the day, and we are celebrating it. Now, contributions to Indian education. What were his contributions? The most significant contribution to educational thinking and practice is the reports of University Education Commission. This commission was formed in 1948-49. It was also called as the Radhakrishnan Commission because he was heading that commission. The role of this commission was to form, I would say, a framework for higher education in India. According to him, the objective of education should be believe that life has a purpose, to nurture the wisdom, to awaken the innate ability of the humans, to prepare for democratic processes, learning the skill of self-improvement, and to be aware of one's cultural heritage, because he was promoting culture a lot. So he said that education's one of the purposes knowing about and promoting your cultural heritage as well. The man himself, respected Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. So this is it from today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow with some more important information and news pieces. Till then, keep studying, keep writing, keep revising and keep reading. Jai Hind, bye-bye.